So it's like, don't discredit these areas and go out and find, find facilities in towns of like, 5 to 25,000. Talk to the owner, go and meet them. And these properties, I mean, you can find some expensive properties. I mean, the more doors they are and the more filled up they are, then the more expensive they are, right? But I was talking to a guy just right before this, and he's, he can only afford a couple $100,000, okay, to buy his first facility. This is what he can afford. So he has to be looking in tertiary markets, right? Because, as you go through this, this is going to be more expensive. I mean, if you have millions of dollars that you can buy in primary market, right? If you can come up with $1 million, then you could probably buy in a primary market if you wanted to. We use that as a down payment. But if you can only come up with like 50 or 100 grand, which is typically most people, I would say most people 300,000 or less for a down payment on a property, and you're doing what's reverse engineering, right? Reverse engineering, because you're trying to figure out what areas you should be focusing on of all these areas to look for facilities. All right. And so that's the purpose of the conversation, is trying to figure out, where should I look? Right. And so when you think of primary and secondary and tertiary markets, you're going to be, and you're going to be in the $3 million plus purchase price for this. 3 million plus. Okay. On average, maybe you can find a diamond in the rough, but like I'm telling you, a lot of times that's like few and far between, especially nowadays. Like when I got started like 7 years ago, I was finding diamond in the roughs everywhere, but it's kind of harder now. It's a lot more work to find those. And then the sub-primary. So I'm buying my facility, the next facility we close on, in Carrollton, Georgia. Carrollton, Georgia, for me, I would consider that a sub-primary market. It's a suburb of Atlanta. And, even though there's like 40,000 people there, so I'm purchasing that facility for $1.4 million. Okay. $1.4 million. So you could probably get in some suburb, like some sub-primary areas, properties for between $1 and $3 million. Okay. Just to give you guys an idea. 1 million to 3 million. Okay. That would be, I'd say, for the most part. Now, when you get into secondary markets, secondary markets, I would say probably are going to be between $1 and $3 million. Okay, $1 and $3 million. Unless you find just like somebody that has been in that secondary market since it was a tertiary market, and then it became a secondary market. And you want to look for, areas like what used to be a tertiary market, but is now a secondary market. And you might be able to find some of those diamond in the roughs in those areas. Okay. So a secondary market is going to say 1 to 3 million. Okay. Now, a sub-secondary market is going to be like, I'm going to say anywhere, anywhere from I say 500,000 to 1.5 on average, 500,000 to 1.5. So for instance, we bought a facility in Valdosta, Georgia, which Valdosta has 75,000 people, right? So that would be considered a secondary market. Right. But then, and they do have, Valdosta does have a few suburbs of that town. And one of them is actually Bemis. Bemis is where we actually bought, if anybody knows, if we bought that facility, it was right on the border of Valdosta and Bemis. It's really a Valdosta address, but right north of us is a little town called Bemis. And so that would be considered a sub-secondary market. And like once you start kind of going out into those areas, the prices get cheaper and cheaper. So you might be able to find a diamond in the rough. But like our competitor from that property that we bought is King Storage. Remember I told you about King Storage? And they have like this massive, huge storage facility that's probably worth a lot of money. I'm guessing it's a huge facility. It's probably like 300-400 doors. And so, that's probably worth like, $4 million. And that's a sub-secondary market. So you can find more expensive properties in these areas, but you can also find this type of facility, right? So I'm going to say sub-secondary is going to be maybe 500K to like maybe let's say 2 million. Okay. That's a good average, I think. Okay. And then now in the tertiary market, so now we're going into these towns that are like, 15, 20,000. And there is a lot of towns like this in your state. Find these towns because these are gold mines. There's not a lot of competition in these towns. And, and they're just mom and pop owners. The only thing with tertiary market is that, they're mom and pop owners. So they really want to like know you. Like you need to be the type of person that goes out and connects with these owners. Okay. So you can't sit there. Like every owner I talk to is like, everybody calls, they all want to buy my storage facility. I tell them to send me an offer and nobody ever sends me an offer and nobody ever comes here. Like nobody goes there. And these tertiary market owners, they want to know, like, and trust you. So our process when we talk to tertiary market owners is hop on Zoom and let's talk on Zoom and introduce ourselves to each other. And, and then go out and meet the owner. One of us, somebody on my team is going to meet that person. And a lot of tertiary market owners, they don't want to do business like with anybody that doesn't come to meet them. And another thing too, is they will not show you financials unless you're like right there with them. I would tell you, out of 1 out of 10 owners is like this. And they basically say like, look, I'll sell my property. I'll take an offer, come here, meet me, and I'll show you my financials. Right. And that's really a lot of owners do that. So this is where the gold is, honestly, especially if you want to get started. I mean, these are great property. Like we got one under contract. It's in the panhandle of Florida. It's 66 units for $200,000. I mean, it's worth $500,000-$600,000, and we got it under contract for $200,000. And there's also a car wash on the property, which taking up a half of an acre. And we're going to just, take that down and add some more units. And we picked up this property, in a tertiary in a small little town for $200,000. And she's full. The property is full. Right. So, I mean, and the one thing I love about tertiary markets as well, too, is that the tenants stay for a long time. Right. So primary market turnover is all the time because, I mean, who wants to pay $300 a month for 10 years? Nobody wants to do that. But a tertiary market, people will pay $50 or $100 a month for like 5 or 10 years. They just do. So that's another reason why I love tertiary markets. So I said, don't discredit these areas and go out and find facilities in towns of like, 5 to 25,000. Talk to the owner, go and meet them. And these properties, I mean, you can find some expensive properties. I mean, the more doors they are and the more filled up they are, then the more expensive they are, right? But you'll find, I mean, typically, 200-300 doors is the most. So I would say probably $2 million. So I would say in a tertiary market, you can find stuff for, $50,000, all the way, not 50, yeah, $50,000 all the way up to like, $1.5-2 million in a tertiary market. Okay. Let me see. Yeah. So let's say 50K to 2 million K. Right. And then, but most of the time, and especially in sub-tertiary, you'll be at like, you'll be like 50K to, 500K in a sub-tertiary. Okay. So now you kind of have an idea of like this is all the different markets in the commercial world and kind of how you should be looking at them. And then you have the cap rates, right? So when you run deal analysis, you know what number to use. And you also have what the population is of each of these areas, just to give you kind of an idea. Now, there's always anomalies. Yeah, anomalies. But I mean, you have kind of an idea overall, this is what it's looking like. And then on top of that, now you have the price range. So you're like, okay, I can probably afford a 500, because I was talking to another guy earlier. He emailed me. He was like, look, I can afford $500,000. I was like, okay, well, you need to be looking at really like, tertiary to sub-secondary markets is what you need to be looking at. So when I'm telling somebody you should be looking in tertiary to sub-secondary markets, this is what I mean. This is exactly what I mean right here. So hopefully that gives you an overview of where you should be.